It's if somebody's running into a ceiling, it's not their fault. They're just unaware of what's really happening. It's within that programming of the
Mhm.
subconscious that's causing it. But when we shift that, remember I talked about the subconscious perceptions. So when we
Yeah.
shift that programming, we instantly change our perceptions of how we see the world and how we see ourselves in the world,
Mhm.
which then changes the results that we're experiencing.
You are listening to 5 a.m. podcast. Your morning motivation starts here.
Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast. I'm your host, Michael Clausen. Now, most of us know what we should be doing to reach that next level, but oftentimes there's a massive and frustrating gap between knowing and doing. Now, why do we stall? Why do we self-sabotage just as we're about to hit that breakthrough? Our guest today is a master at closing that gap. Dr. Joseph Drolshagen is a rapid growth specialist who has been named one of the top business coaches in America for 5 consecutive years. With 28 years in corporate America and a doctorate in psychology, he created the SMT method, which is subconscious monetization technology. He doesn't just look at your tasks, he looks to the conditioning that's keeping your business small. Today, we're talking about getting out of our own way, aligning our mindsets and with our revenue goals, and the nuts and bolts of rapid growth. Dr. Joseph, welcome to the 5am
Hey,
podcast.
great to be here with you, Michael.
I'm happy to have you. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I especially liked it's the subconscious monetization technology, correct? I got that right.
Yes, you did.
Yes.
And
Okay.
it
So
goes by a couple different names, but yeah, that's one of them.
we're going to dig into this today. We're going to start with possibly nobody's favorite task at work or everybody's favorite task at work, sales, and that sales psychology bridge. And Dr. Joseph, you have spent nearly 30 years in corporate America, climbing all the way to VP of sales before diving into a doctorate in psychology. What was the glitch in the system that you kept seeing in high performers that led you to focus on this subconscious mind?
Michael, great question. A lot of it is you talked about the sales psychology and things like that. But a lot of it is we're programmed with such a negative connotation to sales, right? But if you think about it, every single one of us all day throughout our day, we're doing sales. When we're convincing our kids to pick their toys up, that's sales. You know what I'm saying? Like when we're negotiating where we're going for dinner, like every part of our life is sales. We just don't see it as such. So the way to ease that up is not look at it the way the mind defines sales to be. Right. Because there's always and I had this. I remember when I was in my 20s, I was like, man, I'll never go into sales because I always pictured it being like the old used car salesman type of mentality, where you push people. But that's not, I don't sell anything today. As many years and as much as I've done within sales, within organizations, corporations, and then led sales teams, I don't sell anything. I offer to help people based on the way I do things. And that resonates with some people and it doesn't with others. So
Yes.
when we get that stigma out of there of what sales was defined to look like, which again, for me, it was always the used car salesman, then we could get a different perception of that and
Yes.
understand we're doing it all day, every day.
That's right. So do you think that the trouble that people in sales may actually have on a psychological level is the fear of rejection?
That's one of them. Yes. And even then I've worked myself, but then a lot of sales teams, a lot of outside sales personnel I work with and business owners even, and we work on that. And really what I do is it's going to sound silly, but I just turn it into games. When I was doing that and cold calling, trying to develop territories and things, I'd say like 5 or 10. I'm going to go for 5 no's today. And then I would just start cold calling and people go, no, we don't use that. But no, we don't use that. No. And then like the third, fourth person will go, oh yeah, I'd be interested in talking to you. And part of me goes, damn, that took away one of my no's. And all of a
Right.
sudden we start reconstructing that and taking the sales is perceived to have such a heavy weight to it and such a letdown if it doesn't happen. But there's really just, they need it or they don't need it. It's just a simple yes, no. It's not the weight of our life that goes into it like it feels like it does. Does that make sense,
Yeah.
Michael?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know so I've always thought about sales, not always, but mostly thought about sales as service. I'm providing a service. I'm trying to make someone's life better or remove some difficulties from somebody's life and bring in some peace of mind or something. And I remember I was selling life insurance for a while. I enjoyed it. I saw the value in it, but what I would get reprimanded for is I would get these lists of clients that I'd have to go see, and oftentimes I would realize that they're much better off with the policies that they had versus what I was trying to sell them. And so I would go back and I would actually make a case with my boss as to, this couple, I understand they own a few businesses, but you should see their life insurance policies. I had to leave because it just in good conscience couldn't remove what I thought was already working really well and give people an inferior product. But
And that's an attaboy to you on that. I learned early on, if I don't believe in what I'm selling, if I don't believe it's the best product for certain fits or whatever it may be and things like that, I never ever did well in sales. So when I started aligning the products I was selling and why there were benefits. Maybe it wasn't always cost. Everybody
yes,
always thinks lowest cost, right? It wasn't cost a lot of times. But when you have an ideal product that fits perfectly into that customer, it's worth a higher price tag to it. To
that's right.
them, it has a higher value to it. So it's looking
Absolutely.
at those things as well. And every salesperson I work with, we bring that into alignment with what we're doing. So we're not just out selling gadgets because that's what we're doing today and trying to do it. We're doing it because we have a belief behind what we're doing and the
Yes,
products we're serving.
absolutely. And then, of course, Jim Rohn, a fellow that I like to read his books, he talked about how fortune is in the follow up. And I did enjoy the follow up. I wanted to play the long game. I wanted to have a network and build that out. Can you talk maybe a little bit about the cautionary tale that the whales or the shiny objects can be in sales?
Yeah, and it's really like for me, the best mix of that when I'm working is a mixture of those two.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't have all of one, all of the other. But when I was in corporate and leading sales teams and stuff, I would only let customers get to a certain percentage of our business. And I learned that because of growing up in Detroit, Michigan, getting into automotive right away, is they are great at getting embedded into your business and then closing your doors in
Yeah.
price downs and things like that, and forcing and so I'm always really careful when I'm working with sales personnel as far as you want to build that, the whole tier of it. You don't want just one idle thing and
Yes.
have that be 80% of your business. You want to build that out. So you're managing that as you're growing, as you're building that.
Yeah, and I think speaking of Detroit, Rock City, I was thinking about my friends and family on the other side of the big mitt that Michigan is, and seeing how those Grand Rapids businesses really needed that to add more legs to their stool because a monopod works great, but not if you want to sit on it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. And my son went to school over in that area, Western Michigan University.
Oh yeah, it's a great part of the country, and of
Beautiful.
course, who doesn't love saying Kalamazoo?
Right.
You coined the term, the SMT method. For the entrepreneur who feels like they're working 80 hours a week but staying stagnant, how does that subconscious mind directly impact their bank account?
Oh, immediately, short term, long term. I mean, you'll start seeing that. In any business, all businesses at some point they hit kind of a ceiling, right? And then what it is we gear up and then we get through that ceiling and we get to the next level. So it happens constantly, not constantly, but at certain levels as we're growing. Companies that are a few $100,000 that get to the million, they'll hit a stall point in there somewhere near that million. And what happens is as we work through that and go to the next level, instead of going to a million, it'll go to 1.2, 1.7, 2 million, whatever it may be and stuff. But we have those built in. And so it's part of building a business really is that we hit those points at certain times. But what happens is those things happen, and all of a sudden, because of our conditioning, we start working harder. We start employing more effort. We start working more hours. We start sleeping, breathing, living it all, while we're working and when we're not. And then the other side of it is not only now are we working harder, but we're going back through all our strategies and we're trying to double up and we're trying to do all this stuff. And all it does is creates more lag, which brings the revenues down even more, which creates more of that. So instead of just a ceiling that you're bumping up against, now you're actually taking that and starting to bring it back down, as far
Yes.
as the revenue growth.
We all have a list of things we know would grow a business. Why is willpower usually the weakest tool to actually try and bridge that gap between the knowing those tasks and actually executing them?
Okay, for my instance, I'll use me as the example here. I've built multiple businesses. Okay. Not one of those businesses ever went according to my plan. Right. And when we look at that, somebody wants to start a business, they get their excitement about it and stuff like that. They get their game plan, their business plan, all that in alignment. And then they start moving into the action items and they start taking the actions. But a majority of the growth that when things like that happen don't fit that plan, don't fit the to-do list, and they don't fit the 90-day, 6 months, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year, whatever goals and things. It's that flow that we get into that allows those things to happen. So when we're coming from our logical mind all the time and coming strategy, exhaustive efforts, all of that stuff, we're actually blocking off those avenues from allowing it to grow within itself based on the systems that we've put together. So people will spend so much time developing systems, and they're great systems. But unless their growth is coming through that exact system, they miss out on that. So what I do is I help people take those systems, because we have to have systems in a business, but take those systems, but allow them to be in alignment with what it is they desire. So that this way here, it's not like where we got blinders on. It's like, okay, this is the process we're following. Now all of a sudden these things start happening and these things start happening. And all of a sudden we're experiencing that growth. And again, what happens when a business is stalled in revenue growth is they try to go back to that without realizing it, put those blinders on, and this is how we're going to do it. That didn't work. Now this is how we're going to, and we try all these different things. If you look at the most successful people in the world and you really had a conversation with them, Michael, they will tell you that some of their huge strides that brought them the success they experienced, it didn't fit into a to-do plan that they had. It's they were doing what they thought the right thing to do was, but they were open to receive through that or any other avenues, and that's how it happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you were talking, I was thinking about a good friend of ours that has had success with some franchise businesses. There's been some hits and misses along the way, of course, as you do. The reason that I wanted to bring this up is because I'm always interested when he's talking about coming back from an event that's franchise related and how there's always different levels of success. You have this franchise system that it made me think of what you were saying is because some people might be following the rules that don't exactly work for their region or their clientele list. And do you think that's part of it, of why one franchisee would be doing really well and another one not that far away would actually be suffering?
Absolutely, that's the answer to that question, and that's the reason why that happens. And so what happens so often is, even because I've worked with a lot of companies who are like franchise type of companies and things like that, right? And they come up with the structure. So when you buy into it, you go there and they train you and they do all this and everything else. The people that are most successful, they don't follow that A, B, and C. Life is not A, B, and C, do what I did and get what I got. It's never been like that because we're all unique individuals, which is one of the things that stands out the way I do things when I'm working with people. So now I'm coming from their uniqueness. So we have this structure that's starting and trained on and everything else. Now we start taking that and we start personalizing it by, okay, we veer a little bit here, we veer a little bit there. And I'll tell you a great example of this. Earlier on, I was working with real estate agents, and they do all the work to get the license, and I had my license for a while, so the testing and all the stuff, and it's pretty tough. And then they get their license, and then they find a broker to hang their license with, and they say, okay, now here's what we do to be successful. You make 35 calls a day. You do this many walk-in doors. You do that knocking on doors. You do this. And they have this list of things that and it doesn't work. And the reason being is because some of those people shine when they're doing it. A great example of this, Michael. You ever see somebody doing a social media live and you can tell they can't stand doing it?
Yes,
And don't you feel like I don't watch it. I feel so bad for the person.
totally.
And then you see somebody doing it and it's like the light came on their home, right?
Yes.
And they
Yeah.
just flow so for that person, that works great. That other person has no right doing that. But because we follow these patterns all the time that this is success and it doesn't work, and ultimately what we're doing. And here's a really important thing. Instead of bringing our authentic self into the business and doing it our unique way, which is the quickest way to grow a business and the most positive way to avoid some of those ceilings, we start trying to contour who we are to fit into the pattern of doing what they say we have to do.
Yeah. And along with that, most coaches, they could show up with a to-do list, but you focus on accelerating habits. Can you talk a little bit about that fundamental difference between a, let's say, a standard business habit versus the SMT aligned habit?
So a standard business, if you look at their systems, I'll say, okay, or coaching, for sales and things like that, they have a locked model, right? And you come in the model and you do the things they have to do, which means you have to contort who you are to fit that model. And then somebody else comes in from this way, Michael, and they have to contort who they are. And I've done those and I've learned a lot, but it never brought any real permanent change in my results in doing so. So it was really important once I got on board and knew this was my mission and purpose of my lifetime and my heart and everything else in it, it was important that when people come in and I start working with them, that I have a model that we follow, but the model is fluid to meet with the individual. So you were talking about systems of habits. We develop systems of accelerating habits that are unique to that individual. So of the hundreds of clients that I've coached over the past decade now, 11 years, whatever it's been, not two of them have the same systems that they're following because we tailor them to that individual. And I don't do it. I work with that person to develop those systems for them.
Right. And as you're talking about that, I was thinking of, and I do not remember the sales coach. This is many years ago. I can't remember his name, but I can remember the saying, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. And that makes me think of what you're describing with the owner that comes in, and so many coaches will try and convince him against his will, but he's of the same opinion still. So
Yeah.
one of your books discusses the attachment pattern that keeps businesses small.
Yep.
And this could fit with that man convinced against the will, his will is of the same opinion still. What are those subconsciously attached things that prevent a business owner from scaling?
Yeah, and before I go into, I'd like to explain a little bit because we talked about the knowing doing gap and stuff like that, which I learned from my mentor, the late Bob Proctor and stuff. But when you look at our knowing is our conscious mind. We
Yeah.
know what we want. When somebody sits down, they get this spark of an idea and they get that excitement flowing and everything's sparking and stuff. They know what that is. That's coming from the conscious mind. Subconscious mind hosts all of our patterns, our paradigms, our belief systems, our programs, our experiences, even experiences we didn't personally have, but somebody told us about, is all stored in there. And so that's the voice we hear in our head coming from that subconscious. But maybe even just as important as that is the subconscious is what triggers brain waves to the actions we take or we don't take. So you think about that, somebody who's got this ingenious business idea and they're all ingenious business ideas. And then they start carrying it out and they're going, well, I don't know this. Who do I think I am? These people know how to do it better than I do. And all of a sudden they start and that programming is what plays out. So now when they want to take an action that would really be them in developing their business, they procrastinate and they don't do it, or they go look for other ways, or they go back to somebody else and they have them tell them how to do it. And we're so constantly programmed that we don't know it because we haven't done it, but somebody who's done it knows the way. All that really happens there, Michael, is that person who's done it knows their way. They don't know my way. They don't know your way.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have our neural pathways, and that subconscious, one of the phrases I like to use here is getting rid of our stinking thinking. And the sometimes that stinking thinking is sitting on that subconscious. How do people, they can receive information in, but hopefully they have the light shine on that says, I have to figure out the way that works for me, or there's some stinking thinking I have to take out and put some new beliefs into my brain.
Every single client I work with, we have to go through it in the whole SMT method. is designed to bump up against that programming that's causing the limitation. And then we have the tools to go in and shift that. So we start opening up, because ultimately, here's what happens. We talked about the conscious mind. That's for the knowing part. We know what we want to experience. We know we can feel that business, everything else. And then we got the subconscious, which is the programming that plays. Now, if they're playing against each other, that's that gap. So what we do is, as we notice and shift these things, we start closing that gap between the knowing and doing. So now all of a sudden, the knowing of what we want and the actions we're taking are leading to quicker results from that. And it works great. But with that programming in there, when I started developing this stuff, I had no idea I had programming that was causing my problems. I thought I always blamed outside stuff, right? It's competition. It's the state of the economy. It's, that guy over there. It's, undercutting me, whatever it is. And I blamed those things and nothing ever changed. But when I started looking at how am I playing into it, because here's ultimately what happens. We have that subconscious program, that motherboard, I call it, in our subconscious with all that programming in there, leads to our perceptions. That's how we see the world. That's how we see ourselves in the world, is with those perceptions. And then that leads to our results. So somebody that's got limited programming in there that says, I don't know enough to do this, I have to go and get somebody to tell me, or any of those things. I've had people come to me and they want to take their business from a couple $100,000 to $5 million. And then as we start doing it and get over $1 million, they start getting scared and they go, no, I don't want to do this, man. Because I talked to a friend of mine and he said, but he got to 5 million and it just wiped out. He had no time with family, this, that, and anything, and so we got to deal with that, because that's causing limitation in their results. When somebody hits a ceiling, what happens is we get nervous, right? Because as soon as things stall, we get nervous about going backwards. It's natural, human, perceptions of things like that. So as we start to stall and we start getting that, we right away, because of our conditioning, will put more effort into it. We'll start working more hours. We'll start working harder. Like I said, we'll start taking it home with us and not sleeping. All the things that go with it like that business owners, every business owners I've ever talked to are familiar with that, And so as we do that, now we start going, my strategy here must not be working. I must need to do something different. Or this isn't any good anymore. And all of a sudden we start reprogramming everything we're doing and how we're doing it. And all we're doing is chasing, literally what we're doing is we're going to end up chasing that to a downward spiral in our business. And so one of the things I have to do, I would say to you, 95% of the business owners I work with, one of the first things we have to do is get them to throttle back a little bit. Because they're so used to go 150 miles an hour, the blinders, all that apply to it and stuff. And they're blocking avenues where they could be growing. And instead they're stuck at that ceiling. One of the major qualifications for me to work with any client is that they have an open mind. So when I'm speaking or sharing with somebody and I tell them I have a client who went from $7.5 million and toppled over $22 million in 12 months, and that was the first year of their life, they took 5 weeks of vacation during that year of growth. People will go, that's BS, man. There's no way. That's impossible. I will not work with that person because they're blocked at that point. So the way I define that, I call it the beginner mindset. The way I define that is we all know a lot, Michael. But am I looking at things to I know? Or are we looking at things to where, what can I take from this and add to what I already know? That starts opening the floodgates to different experiences, easier, with less effort,
Right.
and quicker.
Yeah, it almost sounds like the race car driver thinking his vehicle is stalling, but he's actually just going we got to go into the pits and get refueled.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the bankruptcy turnaround.
Okay.
You've helped organizations on the brink of the bankruptcy return
In
to profitability.
bankruptcy.
In bankruptcy. So when a company is failing, is the cure usually a financial strategy or is it a leadership mind shift?
It's, in my experience, it's been both and more.
Okay.
Honestly. And the reason I say that is that's, I'm not kidding you. I was going to say I'm 32 years old, but I'm not. But every gray hair I have came from that. That was such a hard life to live, because I would go home on Friday and there was nothing I could do till Monday. So I wouldn't recharge. I would sit there and I was just anxious about what could I possibly do? And, and it was not a fun time in life doing that. I'm grateful now for the experience of it and how it applies to the people I help. But yeah, it wasn't fun. And one of the things that happened, if we're talking about programming, is within the conscious mind, we start going back to old tools. So I would sit in meetings 5 days a week for an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, and it was just a big complaint session. And this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and it kept going and going and going. But because I was already working on these tools, that I've built today, that I live by and help others to, I knew whatever we put in our focus on is what we're going to bring about. So we talk about problems and more problems come up and more problems come up. And so I started saying, what's one thing going good? And I would say it from the sales side, because I'm really proud of the fact that at a time when we doubled the cost for our products, doubled the lead time, and then you required 50% down just to order raw materials to buy the product, I maintained an 89% customer retention through that phase. Doing that, which I was very, very blessed or grateful that I got to, that happened like that. So I would bring up something like that and people would call me Mr. Over Optimistic and they would do this and they would do that. And one day there was a guy in there that was dealt with the smaller parts and he said, okay, fine. Almost like a whatever, we'll just shut this guy up. Right. And he goes, so we had this problem with the high scrap rate here and we changed this and this and this in the process. And now it brought our scrap rate down to just a little over 10%. Now, there's a guy on the other side of the room who handles large parts, and I'm talking like 25,000 pound plus parts. And he goes, wait, what happened? And he told him, he goes, oh, we got the same thing. He goes, here's what we did. Now, 3 days later, this guy comes in the meeting, and he goes, we instituted that same thing, and it brought our scrap rate down to single digits. After that, now, people still wouldn't volunteer stuff and lead that way, but what they would do is right outside the conference room was my office. And so after one of the meetings, people would come in my office and they'd hurry up and come in and shut the door so nobody saw them in there. And they would start talking about these things. And all of a sudden we started getting that momentum going. And that is really a big part of what led to the changeover and having another financial company come in and dump $12 million in the business within months of when we went into bankruptcy, and overnight going from a 3-day a month to a 5-day a week operation.
Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. 5am Podcast is brought to you in part by mkci.ca, a certified member of the Autodesk Developer Network. MKCI helps companies maximize their AutoCAD, Inventor, Navisworks, and other design software investments. Their innovative products like the CommandSys script editor and the Clash Management Suite will streamline your workflow and boost your productivity. Visit mkci.ca today to discover how they can enhance your competitive CAD advantage. That's mkci.ca. Thank you for your support of 5am Podcast. Well, as has been said, you take care of the nickels and dimes and the dollars will take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Ladies and gentlemen, we are chatting with Dr. Joseph Drolshagen. We are having a great conversation about mindset and sales and maybe pulling things out of the fire and renewing what we thought was lost. And ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we have a comment section. We'd love to hear from you on your experiences of maybe aha moments or when the lights came on and you saw all those little critters scurry across the floor for darkness, but you're bringing light to a dark situation. And, there might be somebody in your orbit. Share this episode with them. This might be just the ticket they're looking for and may get you a great Christmas card later this year. So, Dr. Joseph, can you reveal to our audience what the IFGT stands for and how that philosophy dictates the way you coach?
Absolutely. It literally stands for it's freaking go time.
Okay, good.
And that's exactly how I am. I'm not about, 5% growth, things like that and stuff. I'm about huge growth rapidly. I'm about bringing about change and doing so. And this is where it gets a little bit, and doing so with less day-to-day effort going into it, is that we start getting into alignment with what we're trying to create versus trying to push and shove and make things happen.
Yeah. So instead of, Dr. Joseph, I have been trying to pound this square peg into this round hole for the last 36 months. I don't know what's going on. I think the hammer is not working.
Can I say something about that, Michael?
Yes,
Because
please.
so many people in business are, I mean, I know that analogy and it's funny, but so many people in business are like that. And what happens is our programming will tell us, well, it's a state of the economy. It's competition, it's outsourcing. And we blame all these exterior things, but you know what'll happen at the bottom of that day? We'll no longer have that business, or we're going to live on minuscule scraps of what we desire that business to be. It's never outside influences, situations, circumstances. And the way I can prove that, we all know companies who have taken their greatest strides in growth during a down economy. And we all know numerous companies who struggled during boom times. So it's not about that. And it's if somebody's running into a ceiling, it's not their fault. They're just unaware of what's really happening. It's within that programming of the subconscious that's causing it. When we shift that, remember I talked about the subconscious perceptions? So when we shift that programming, we instantly change our perceptions of how we see the world and how we see ourselves in the world, which then changes the results that we're experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah. We have a saying, and ladies and gentlemen, you can go to 5ampodcast.com/shop. Shameless plug for a mug and a t-shirt that says, think it, speak it, see it. And so we
You-
might be thinking and speaking the wrong things, and we're not going to like what we see. But once we start thinking about what we want and realize, well, let's say we're talking about the ceiling, and we think we're seeing a ceiling, and all we talk about is ceilings. That's all we're ever going to see. And Dr. Joseph will set us on the right path or the right racetrack. I've already mentioned race cars and
You
well,
have, you
NASCAR
have,
and things.
and
So,
to
yeah,
that
yes,
point there, Michael. And as soon as we get done, I'm going to get me a cup and a
yeah,
shirt.
yeah. Thank you.
But to that point of what you're saying there is we get stuck in these places and everybody's doing their best to get through it with what they think is the best, but what they're not attributing to what they're experiencing is that motherboard of that programming
Yes,
that's
exactly.
working against them rather than working for them. So remember I told you about one of the first things I have to do with business owners I work with, a majority of them are getting them to throttle back a little bit. And what I do, if you think about a business somebody wanted to open, when somebody, whoever's listening to this, if you think about when you started your business, you had a lot of clarity on what that business was going to look like, how that was going to impact your life, how it was going to impact your family, your
Yes.
time. We have all that clarity in there. And then we get going with it, start building it. And we start at a certain point and we get to, and then all of a sudden we hit one of those ceilings and we lose all clarity of what we're doing and why we're doing it, which then takes the programming and kicks it into high speed with what's there right now. So we start working harder and all that. One of the things I tell people is if you feel your business is stalled in revenue right now, stop. Even an hour, just stop and get clarity on what this business is, why you wanted to open this business. Bring that clarity back into it because that'll help you making some, it's not going to fix the whole thing, but it'll help you start making some shifts in that perception of why you're even doing it. Because when we're in that struggle mode, it's just go, go, go.
Yeah,
Until some people I've
absolutely.
talked to, they just didn't even want to do it anymore. They just closed it and went to work somewhere because of that. Where if they'd have just taken that time and got back into the clarity of what that looks like, all of a sudden it'll start building a little bit of momentum. And then understanding I wasn't able to pick out that programming within me that was causing that. So I had to find, and it took me numerous people to find somebody that could help me figure that out.
Hmm.
Now we can do that very quickly. Find out what that is going on in there that's working against you and make sure they got tools to shift that and shift that around. And you'll start noticing that ceiling start growing again.
Yeah. And as you're talking, I was thinking about the racing cars and the red line that we see on our tachometers on the vehicle. And it's giving us an indication of how many revs that engine can actually handle. Do you think that our minds have this subconscious revenue ceiling, maybe that causes us to self-sabotage? Well, you actually mentioned this about hitting a certain number and all of a sudden cautionary tales come clouding our vision.
And that number will be different to every individual. You can't always say it's going to be at $750,000 because it'll be different at every individual because we're unique. So where that comes in and hits, but yeah, absolutely. And so when we're talking about the more effort and things like that, what we're doing is we're redlining for as long as we can. And that's when exhaustion, burnout, not even wanting to do it, that's where those things start coming out at. So it's okay to hit that once in a while and you can't live there. Living there just starts destroying everything. And I don't mean just finances. I'm talking about, I've seen families and complete thing destroyed because of
Yes.
business and running it like that.
Right. And we want, when we see our family members, we smile, or when they see us, they smile. Oh, good, he's here. Oh, good, she's here. And so we've got to shift gears and get off of that red line.
And some of the truths with that, Michael, the programming that we hear is we've heard for so long, if you want a successful business, you got to be willing to trade off your life for it, right? Until you get, and it's always that carrot somewhere out there that I'll get to at some point. And most people following that never, ever get to that carrot. So I make sure when I'm working with the individual, we start getting successes very quickly. And then we start building upon those successes. So it becomes a thing of excitement where growing a business is exciting. The way when you thought about starting your business, it had excitement to it. We get back into that mode of it where it's fun, exciting, expansive, going through that growth mode and not terror.
Yeah.
To not pick a better word, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and if we think terror and we speak terror, that's what we're going to see. And that's not what we want. We certainly have to change the direction and change our focus. For those sales professionals that they're listening and they want the number one producer in their company, have their name up at the top of the list, what is that in a first internal shift that they need to make before they can even maybe pick up the phone?
Yeah, one of the things, and I've gone through this myself. I was in sales traveling 3,000 to 5,000 miles a week for years, trying to build territories, barely making a mark while other guys are taking off Fridays, golfing, just
Yeah.
landing deal after deal after deal, and I couldn't figure out the difference between us. And one of it is, and this is where my passion came out when I was leading sales teams, is you got your top producers, which is usually a small amount of your, total sales team. And then you got the whole middle pack. There's people in that middle pack that want to be top producers, but honestly, Michael, they don't know what's stopping them. And it's that programming within the subconscious. And it could be fear-based. It could be, experience. It could be even where they grew up. I grew up in a very low-income family in Detroit, Michigan. Rightfully, there's no reason I should be here having this conversation with you because I was told my whole life that I was going to work in a factory like everybody else in my family did. And that was going to be my lot in life and stuff. And I tried to, and it just wasn't me. And, things happened the way they happened and stuff, but only because I wouldn't settle for that. So when you look at that, one of the first things I have to do when I'm working with that middle of the pack, within 15 minutes, 10 minutes, I can tell you whether that's somebody that I can help or not. And if it is, then what we do is we start identifying and shifting that programming within the subconscious. And when I say that, I've had people go from bottom of the pack where they work, worried about getting fired for years, to getting to within 6 months, 8 months, going to where they became the leader. Whenever anybody new came in their sales organization, they worked with them for 3 months just to get them going in that fresh start. That's how quickly change can happen.
Wow, that's really good. Because it isn't those external, the economy or the location or the quality of my customers. It's actually all it's up in here, right here.
It
And
is.
that's oftentimes where fear resides as well. And
Yes.
you are known for your infectious energy and your tenacity and skills that you've built over the years. And then when you face a new daunting challenge, what does your personal process for managing fear look like?
And that's a great question because fear, anything we do outside of the normal is there's going to be fear attached to it. One of the things I did when COVID hit, because you couldn't go outside and all that stuff, is I
Yeah.
went out to Chattanooga and I started hang gliding. So my first run off a 2,000-foot mountaintop, and they say run, Michael, but you only get 3 steps really, and you're in the air. And my first launch, man, everything inside of me was going, no, no, and the second step I could feel my heart beating in my throat. And the third step, it was like just total fear. And then it followed ecstasy. When my feet left the ground and that glider did what it was, designed to do, it was probably one of the most incredible sensations of my life. And that's what happens. Fear is trying to protect us. It's trying to keep us safe. But if you look at that and you look at all the things like our safety zone and things like that, it's trying to keep us in that zone, but we'll never grow. We'll never achieve what we truly desire in there. So we have to go outside that. So fear is going to be a part of it. So we have tools, and the way we go about that is we have fear, but we kick it the hell out of the driver's seat of our life. We don't let it dictate what we do and don't do. And
Yeah.
there's ways of dealing with fear where we can soften it a little bit as we get that more of that understanding of what its purpose and what it's trying to do as we go forward.
Now,
Fear isn't
have you
stopping us.
That's right. It's not.
It's
And
not its
it's
intention.
yeah. And it's almost like it's that petulant child that wants attention.
It
That
is. Yeah.
it just makes
The
a
whole
lot of
voice in
noise.
our head is that.
Yes. That's right. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, you and I talked briefly about that. We could say it's a myth of rapid growth requires sacrificing health and family and all the good things of the things we're actually working towards achieving. Have you ever found a time where, man, I've got to prove to this client of mine that they can scale their business while actually improving their life? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Level we go up to, we hit that. Yes. Yeah.
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 And so
And
how do
as we
you,
do it, go on.
yeah. No, how do you overcome that objection?
What we do, remember I told you about how we start getting successes really early and we start
Yep.
building upon those. So at
Yeah.
some point when somebody's looking out and they're at, let's say 2 million, and they're heading to 7 million, and they're on their way there, they'll get that fear. And then as they get it, we will deal with that. We'll shift that and open that up. And all of a sudden now they get closer to it and they're realizing, like, I had one guy that told me this. He only wanted to grow his business so big because his buddy had an enterprise, a huge business. And he said he killed himself and, all this stuff for it and everything. So that's what he had in his head, and he didn't want to do that and lose his family. So as we started growing to this thing and as we started getting it going, it's like, hey, didn't you just go away for a whole month with your family because his wife's from another country? And he goes, yeah. I go, how was business? And business kept growing while he was gone because we put the team in place, and he has, all the things covered. And all of a sudden I started going, so what about the hire? He goes, oh yeah, we can fly by that now. And he literally did. He went from a couple $1,000s a month. He's doing $60,000 to $65,000 revenue a week now.
Substantial. And it's almost like we get that stinking thinking out of the way.
Yeah, and one of the things with it, Michael, we don't do one, okay, now today we're going to work on increasing revenue. And then tomorrow we're going to increase on working, and freedom of time. It all works simultaneous through the process. It's designed to work that way. So as we start opening up more successes and we see revenue growing, and now we got more free time, I will literally talk to some of the owners. If I'm talking to one of my clients and he's sounding like he's a little bit upset or like, nervous, I'll get out of the office. You're not helping anybody there in that state. So just get out of the office, go do whatever, go take a drive up the shore, go do whatever it is,
Yes.
go do something and get
Yeah.
back into alignment with what you're doing and why you're doing it. And just let the day go like that. And they are so much more productive doing that than if they just stayed at the office all day. And actually even more so because they're not demoting their
Right.
team
Yeah. Because when
or motivating.
like there are times where bosses really do have to go play a round of golf or go to the gym, take the missus out for dinner
Yes.
or lunch because
Yeah.
they don't want to be their own worst enemy at the office. And so there's some self-sabotage probably that can show up in a CEO's life, and that can be sneaky and kind of worm its way in there. Might there be mislabeling of those self-sabotage as, oh, I'm just too busy, or I was an unlucky break?
Procrastination. Yeah,
Yeah.
call it a million different names with it. Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. You call it a million different names, but yeah, that's what it is.
Yes.
I'm too busy. I can't afford to take a 2-hour lunch. Come on, really?
Yeah.
Really? You
I
can't take
think,
2-hour lunch.
have you read the book E-Myth Revisited? That's an older book, and it's about the people that believe the lie that they have to be chief cook and bottle washer and delivery
That's the other
driver.
one.
I can't relinquish control of this because you guys don't know how I do it, and you can't do this. And so then you can't leave the office. And then misery loves company, but nobody wants to be company with misery.
I've had one client who I face that a lot with my clients and stuff. We all do, and I'm not making fun. It's just part of the process and stuff.
Yeah.
But
That's right.
One client who continually kept saying, I need to clone myself about 8 times, because I can't trust anybody else. I can't, da, 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 da. So as we started assembling his team, because that's one of the things I help people do, as soon as we get the growth, now we need the team to support that. And so as we're going through that and stuff, and it's bringing that team in and stuff. And that was the same gentleman who left for 4 weeks, and his business was actually stronger the weeks he was gone than before he left. Yeah. And here's what the fear is. Well, if I'm not necessary to be in the day to day, then what use do I have to the business? And so what I do is I explain to them, you are the brains of the operation. This is your vision. You own this. You're the designer. You're the director. That's who you are. Without you, there is
Yeah,
no business because there's no vision.
that's right.
And so as we start right-sizing that and bringing it into it, then they start understanding they have designed and are guiding the ship.
Yeah,
And then they help their team to be successful in whatever roles they're playing within the team, or,
yeah,
empower them to succeed.
absolutely. And with that mindset, then I think that helps the business owner to remunerate their people well, because they realize that I might be the visionary and the head of the ship, but because I've built such a great team around me, I can actually go do the things I want, and I can innovate, and I can maybe build more businesses, or I'm going to find, because of the team, I'm going to find an auxiliary or an ancillary thing that I never thought of before.
Now you
Yes.
go out and you play around the golf.
Hmm.
You kind of get that calm going and things like that. And all of a sudden you meet somebody who has a
Yes.
business that you want to acquire, or knows of
That's right.
somebody who knows, and things like that start compounding on top of it that you can't plan for. But when you put yourself in those situations, when business owners look at themselves as that designer, that they own that vision, they've designed that shift. When we start looking at it differently like that, that shifts our perception of how we see ourselves in the world, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sure does. For me, coming from a Christian perspective and thinking of creation and how God created Adam and Eve and after their own kind, He actually created us to be creative beings. God told His creation to be fruitful and multiply, which means when we create a business and we have our own Adams and Eves all over the place, and we enable them to be fruitful and multiply in what we've created, it is, you can realize why profit is great, and profit can become great profit and greater profit, and it's because we're allowing people to be who they truly are within what we've been able to create. Yeah.
I love that you and I both come from Christian background. And
Yeah.
and really it says in scripture that we are co-creators.
Yes.
So what that means, and it says in there, ask anything in my name, and if you believe that you've received it, it will be
Yes.
yours. That's the vision right there. That's when we start the business and we get all we know, we can see it. We can see it in our mind. We can feel being that business owner at that level of 10, 20, 50, $100 million,
Yeah.
whatever it is we want to go out to. We see it right there. That's
Yeah.
that co-creator. So we design the vision that's already been planted within inside of us. And so we design that vision, and then we start going forward. And it's not our job to figure out every inch and nook and cranny and this and that and everything else. That's not our job, but we spend so much time in that area. And what we're doing is we're blocking out from allowing that to happen the way we're designed to
Yes.
allow it to happen.
That's right. And I love to read old books because I like to see how people used to think 100 or 200 years ago or more. And I recently found the Wycliffe translation of the Bible, and it's written in the 1380s and 70s, somewhere in there, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But you were just talking about Mark 11:24. So 700 and some years ago, I feel like I'm getting ready to read the Abraham Lincoln speech. But you back to what Wycliffe wrote in the late 1300s, that Mark 11:24 actually says, if you speak it out, it will come running to you. And
So
so
can
we
I tell
want
you
to,
something, Michael? We didn't touch on it, but can I tell you something?
yeah, tell me.
Every client I work with, remember I told you about throttling
Yes.
back?
Yeah.
One of the ways I do that is the way I open people up into the program is we develop what the SMT method refers to as a dynamic vision. If we get that clarity of what that looks like, write it, we speak it, and then, but we also, now we get the clarity of what it looks like, and we add the feeling tone. What's it feel like to be that business owner at whatever the level is? What's it feel like to wake up in the morning? How do you spend your day? How do you, and we put, and then that division is that right there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And Neville Goddard talks about that too. He says, "What does it feel like? What does
Yep.
it feel like?" Oh man, there's so
Yeah.
many times
We
where
skip over that so much.
yes,
And
yeah,
part of that's the programming too, right? Because as
it is.
men, for a long, we were for a long time. It's changing somewhat now, but we're not supposed to feel. We're supposed to be
Yes,
doers. We
right.
do, and we stuff
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah, yeah. We're not human doings. We're human beings.
Yeah, but so often we live like human doings. And anybody listening to this, if you're in that place, none of this is to make fun of you or anything else. My whole purpose and my passion of my life is to help people get out of that mode and get into growth being exciting and enjoyable and more freedom of time to do the things you want to do. It's just there's things blocking you that you're not aware of right now.
That's right. Can you tell people how they can get in touch with you?
The easiest way is anybody can reach out to me at coachwithjoey.com and schedule a 15-minute call with me. And I'll tell you what, because you mentioned this, anybody that calls me, I'll give you a free copy of the book, Break
Nice.
the Attachment Pattern, Keeping Your Business Small, on that conversation. And it's not a sales. I don't even talk about the program. It's to serve. I get on there, I find out what's going on with somebody, and I help them get some tools that they can hang up the phone and start applying and start noticing some differences happening in their business.
Okay, so good question for you here. So in the 15-minute phone calls, in such a short window, what has been the most common aha moment that you've been able to provide for somebody, or that somebody has said, "I just figured this out"?
There's so many. Part of it, I mean, I think one of the higher ones is the efforting, the working harder, trying to make it happen.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we think we have to blunt force trauma our way
Yeah.
through.
Yeah. And all we're doing when we do that, Michael, is we're just blocking it
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
happening.
We don't want to blunt force our way through things. We don't have to breach doors. I guess there's victory in a multitude of counselors, but there's the easy way and the hard way, and we don't always have to do the hard way. So
Very well said.
just as we're wrapping up, we live in a world of fluctuating markets and programming from TV and news and economic shifts. How do you teach a leader to stop blaming those outside circumstances for a lack of internal growth?
If I'm not working with somebody, it's hard to do that. As soon as I start working with somebody, we start immediately, as we're shifting, as we're identifying and shifting, it very,
Yeah.
very quickly becomes a thing from it's not out there. It's the problem is coming from within. And now let's do something about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Well, Dr. Joseph, your energy is exactly what we need at 5 a.m. Thank you so much for reminding us that the only thing standing between us and our vision is the conditioning that we choose to carry.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Great conversation, Michael. Such a blessing to be here with you.
Oh, yes, 100%. So, ladies and gentlemen, you might be tired of the hamster wheel or finding a bigger hammer, and you might be ready for some actual rapid growth. So talk to Dr. Joseph. He's got that 15-minute conversation. He'll help you identify your own knowing and doing gap. Head over to coachwithjoey.com. Head over there right now and book a call. It might be the most productive 15 minutes your business has had in the last week. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. Don't let your subconscious stay on autopilot. Take a hold of that wheel. And of course, as I always like to say, please seize your day, enjoy those sunrises and sunsets and all those beautiful adventures in between. I'm Michael Clausen, and I'll see you on the next 5 a.m. podcast. Thanks for watching the show. Just a reminder that you can get all of our resources, other episodes, and read our blog posts at 5ampodcast.com. 5 a.m. Podcast is brought to you in part by MKCI.ca, a certified member of the Autodesk Developer Network. MKCI helps companies maximize their AutoCAD, Inventor, Navisworks, and other design software investments. Their innovative products like the CommandSys script editor and the Clash Management Suite will streamline your workflow and boost your productivity. Visit mkci.ca today to discover how they can enhance your competitive CAD advantage. That's mkci.ca. Thank you for your support of 5am Podcast.